I now recognize the member for the 2nd District, Honorable Melvin Turnbull.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I rise to give my contributions to this bill before us, the Merchant Shipping Amendment Bill of 2025. And I was trying to find out, Madam Speaker, if before this, any amendments would have been done recently or prior to, not prior to, but post 2007, 2021. And Madam Speaker, I start there. Thank you, AG, for that information. I start there because I listened to the Honorable Deputy Premier and then the Leader of the Opposition speak about the sections in this piece of legislation that deal with the governor having responsibility for merchant shipping, where the Premier and Minister of Finance is the one who has the ultimate responsibility for the subject matter. And Madam Speaker, I wanted to find out if there was any amendments to this legislation prior because, or after 2007, because in 2007, via the constitutional order of the Virgin Islands, we moved towards further securing our advancement with ministerial responsibilities and ensuring where we could give the ministers in the executive powers and overall responsibility to be able to deal with their subject matter. And I'm not sure, Madam Speaker, what all entails in the 2021 amendment, but it may have been an oversight of something that we should have amended then, which I'm hoping, hearing from the Honorable Deputy Premier and the Leader of Opposition, that we will do now, which is make the change to from governor to minister. And even if it includes minister in cabinet. Madam Speaker, before I get into the debate, I've been saying this for a little while now. Not just in this house. But the undercurrent of what continues to show its ugly head in our territory. The narrative, the publications, I want to call it the high science approaches towards having the advancements that we've made in this territory through our constitutional advancement and development for this territory are being walked back or suggested to be walked back in legislations, in publications, in COI recommendations, in law, what is that last one called? Volume 2. Law Enforcement Review, Part 1, and now we have Part 2. And the narrative is that we are not good enough. And Madam Speaker, I will continue to bellow from wherever I could be heard and say that we are in fact good enough. And we as a Virgin Islands people are more than enough. Because when they thought that we couldn't be anything, look at what we've been able to achieve and accomplish. So, Madam Speaker, my debate will start with some reminder points to the Honorable Premier and leader of government business, now also leader of the territory of this Virgin Islands, Premier. I said it to you before. Outside the customs, which has a little bit of I would say difficulty to right now go to, but you have acting post, Chief Immigration Officer, acting post, Royal Virgin Islands Police Force, acting post. And Premier, if we and you and your government don't move, including in this honorable house, through the Speaker, Madam Speaker, I apologize. Thank you, Madam Speaker. Premier, through the Speaker and your government, if you don't move with haste to ensure that the people that are in these positions, acting are not conformed. Madam Speaker, I am wary and fearful that these positions will be filled yet again by persons that do not understand or care to understand the BVI. And there will be a further separation of the authoritative powers and responsibilities here in these Virgin Islands, where there are they and then there is us. And the narrative continues to dictate that we are not enough. We are criminals, we are corrupt, we are this, we are that. So, Premier, this is my encouragement. And wherever else you have persons in acting positions that they feel that somebody coming from the UK may be better than our people, we need to shut that argument down. Commissioner, when I ain't gonna call her no acting nothing. Commissioner Jackie Vanterpool, that's what I call her. Commissioner Jackie Vanterpool. I believe there's about 6 months she's been acting in this position as Commissioner of Police, Madam Speaker. And a lot of questions been asked in the public, even in this honorable house, about what we're going to do to do this and what we're going to do, how we're going to get this done. And in 6 months, Madam Speaker, you're seeing things happening. Before, when I saying this, Madam Speaker, because I was here asking a question. You know, I always kicking about King Anime Police Station. When you ask about policing in the territory and how we're going to combat crime, oh, we need more resources and we need more officers and we need more money and we need more and we need more. And now this good lady is acting for 6 months and people getting arrested. And there's a level of confidence, Madam Speaker, in her leadership because she's coming out in the community and having discussions and meeting with the people and trusting her officers, Madam Speaker, to do their job. But if we ain't careful, I ain't read a report yet, Madam Speaker, the part 2. I got to be full. I got to be full. I got to be awake. I got to have some coffee. Because if it's anything, and I almost guarantee it's just a continuation of where they started part 1. Part 2, there'll be a little bit more height than part 1. Part 1 gives you the introduction to where you're going to end. And I could only imagine how much more examples that they would find to try to qualify the assertions that they would have made in the first report. And I have a problem with that, Madam Speaker, because the Virgin Islands Constitution order speaks about a modern partnership. So rather than continuing to beat me over the head and tell me what wrong, what need to be fixed, Madam Speaker, we are dependent still on you. Help me. Kevin Hart say help. Help me. This is not a test. We know what exists, Madam Speaker. Help me, help us, so that we could improve upon our system, so we could improve upon the things that we have been lacking. Madam Speaker, this bill before this honorable House, Merchant Shipping Amendment Bill, we had a committee meeting this morning, informal meeting with the director and all the qualified persons within the Ministry of Finance and Shipping Registry and Customs and everybody else. And Madam Speaker, the BVI has 200 nautical miles of water that we're responsible for. We all know, Madam Speaker, that right now we don't have all the resources necessary to be able to secure, monitor the waters and the borders for which we are responsible for. And Madam Speaker, this has been known for years upon years. No fault of the Premier or past Premiers. But here's where security comes in. The United Kingdom, through the governor's office, is responsible for the security of our country, including our waters. I remember my little time there in the cupboard, in the cabinet, Premier, we were trying to pass the the blue economy. I think you are on the way with that now, Premier. And there was one section that the former chair of cabinet highlighted. This deals with us under security, so we need you to pull that back and let us consult with the United Kingdom to see how we're going to deal with securing the border. Well, you know the borders is yours to secure. Bring in the boat, them, give us the resources, give us the training necessary to be able to do the things that we need to do, and stop telling me we corrupt. Or stop waiting until something continually drastically happens and then to say, oh, the BVI is this and the BVI is that, and you have to come in and sweep in like you use the Lord and Savior. Once we got the game old. It's an old game. And the people of the Virgin Islands tired of it. Members of the House of Assembly tired of it. Don't just tell me what's wrong. Do something about it, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, in looking at this bill, and I'm going to try my best not to repeat a lot of what was said before, but Madam Speaker, I have to go in and start with what I believe from hearing from Managing Director Samuels and his team, and even the Premier and his objects of reading, and reading through the bill, Madam Speaker. I understand that the BVI is trying to not just partake in what currently exists, but we're trying to expand our horizons in terms of what occurs in our waters and be able to, as much as possible, be at the table in terms of being able to collect revenues, register ships, larger ships that we're currently doing, and have that world class approach, because we are indeed on the world stage. So, Madam Speaker, when I look at Section 4, Clause 2 of this bill, and seeing that we are increasing the amount of jurisdictions and broadening, Madam Speaker, the ownership capacity with who we can register and who we can have enforcement regulations on, Madam Speaker, that is a good step. That is a good step, because I remember, if it wasn't 2, it was probably 3+ years ago, before Mr. Samuels would have left the shipping registry before he came back. I know this is one of the things that he was talking about. We are regulating and we are enforcing laws on what we have, but there's so much more to be had. And I believe this is where we're going, Madam Speaker. So that is indeed a good step, because it bolsters the Virgin Islands maritime economy and enhance our global competitiveness. Madam Speaker, when I look at the ways in which we have approached how we do this, Madam Speaker, and no legislation is ever perfect, or nothing that we try to or attempt to do will ever be perfect. So there's always some areas that we would need to improve upon. The Honorable Leader of the Opposition, member for the 6th, touched on a lot of them, which he is more in tune and au fait with the law and how things would work and not work than I would be, Madam Speaker. But when you look at something like the safety of life at sea, which is abbreviated SOLAS, Madam Speaker, this is one of the 6 conventions that are detailed in a document that was provided to us through the Premier's office to help us understand further what this piece of legislation is attempted to do and where we would be in terms of our shipping registry and merchant shipping in the territory of the Virgin Islands. When you look at safety of life on the sea, it's ensuring that we will be meeting the international safety standards and safeguarding lives and property at sea. That's something good, Madam Speaker. When you get to Clause 28, Part 17A, where it talks about, and the Honourable Member for the opposition, Leader of Opposition, spent some time in 430A to K. The enhancement of the maritime enforcement powers. Madam Speaker, you understand that you're given more authoritative powers to do what needs to be done. It sounds good, but Deputy Premier brought it up. It sounds good. It may seem good, but we got to make sure that they line up properly. Make sure that the governor changed to Premier or Minister, because the Premier might not necessarily be the Minister, so let's change it to Minister. Because there's a Minister responsible for the shipping registry. And then when you think about that, these enhanced powers, Madam Speaker, would allow officers, and you say law enforcement officers, to be able to get more power to go on ships and confiscate things and question people and apprehend certain things and seize this. It sounds good, because now you're expanding your horizon, so to speak. But Madam Speaker, I have a little challenge. My little challenge is a lot of challenge. Because here's another example of good intentions. But when you look at it, it's lacking some meat. Madam Speaker, you telling me, since I've been in this honorable house, elected since 2015 and before then, ministers of finance responsible for the customs have purchased and purchased and purchased maritime and secured border security vessels, and been out there, COVID, they've been out there in joint operations, immigration officers have been out there in joint operations to help secure all borders from the very same things that some of the very same things that we're talking about. Illegal activity, trafficking of drugs, trafficking of human. And Madam Speaker, you're telling me that in this legislation is only reserved for police officers? Make it make sense. Help me, Kevin Hart. Help me. How? Because if it stays under one particular entity and they are able to bring in Premier, I want you to watch a game. According to say, watch a game. It stays under one entity and they are able to bring in the overarching a leader of that entity. They can have a conversation and everything's supposed to be good. And all people who are criminals and who are doing the wrong things are left on the side. In our own country, when you have between the current acting commissioner of customs and his deputies qualified and trained individuals, man, because we over the COVID time, we heard the bawling, the beckoning of those officers trying to ensure that they receive firearm and safety training because they're out there on the waters jeopardizing their life and they have to wait for a officer, a police officer with a gun to come. Man, once we got to read the Bible, you got me out there, Lord send the rain, because I gone. If you got me out there with no machine, and nobody out there with a machine, send the wheel I jumping off, then you bring me a show. That's because this can't be what we're doing in 2025. Because on the flip side of it, man, speaking, I want to draw the balance and bring it to the awareness of the people of these Virgin Islands. On one hand, the COI, which was called in what, 2020? 2019 and 2020? About 2020. And Madam Speaker, four years later, you still have more and more COI officers coming to this territory. Them come in and come in and come out. I know they made them King Army upstairs. A lot of them upstairs. In the police station that I train to open, Madam Speaker. Them upstairs. They don't come downstairs with the cameras. Them upstairs. 4 years later, they're still coming to deal with a report that says everything wrong, nothing right. And this Merchant Shipping Amendment Act of 2025, which AG says was amended in 2021, and previous to that, about 2001. Madam Speaker, we know our borders have been a problem. You tell me you couldn't send some resources to help me do the things that I need to do? Including, Madam Speaker, including help with the legislations that you would have already adopted and is working for you in the United Kingdom. Madam Speaker, it's contradictory. You can't help for what you want to help, and everything you seem to want to help for is to fix what you say wrong. And when we're crying out that things wrong, help us, well, we have to look at your financial situations and your GDP, and you make a little too much money for us to give assistance for this and that. Madam Speaker, really? That old game. That's old game, Madam Speaker. And we got a book wide open. Madam Speaker, in section 175, 186, 192, and 205A, which is clause 8, 13, 22, and 23. In hearing from the director this morning, and even in the objects of reasons, Madam Speaker, and looking at the bill itself, this is where the team is looking to streamline and modernize the way we do things here in the territory. So it is now coming up to speed, Madam Speaker, with legal framework and reducing the administrative burdens and red tape and trying to align the current law, or this law, Madam Speaker, with what exists on the international stage. So I agree with things like that, Madam Speaker. But then, from my point 3 to my point 5, goes to the strengthening of police powers. Notice it's very specific, police powers, which is in sections 415, clause 24, where they will expand the police authority to investigate offenses and ensure that they have the ability to arrest, they have the ability to do whatever needs to be done. According to them, the leader opposition said them out there with God or Jesus and you. And unless Jesus decides to come out from the throne, it's just them and you. And they have the authority, so it's really just you. Madam Speaker, not to say for a second that there aren't police officers who aren't honest and who aren't intent on doing their job and doing it properly. But Madam Speaker, it cannot be done in isolation. It cannot be done void of the proper checks and balances and accountability factor. We can't just leave it to chance because we're saying it's the police. Because if something happens which is contrary to the law, Madam Speaker, then as we go into legislation, you'll see that there's no recourse. If an officer breaks the law or goes against the law, Madam Speaker, you know, to hold it account, or her, or them to account. And Madam Speaker, here's the bottom line of this whole thing. The bottom line of this whole thing is the intention for which the managing director, the premier, and his office is trying to ensure that we on this world stage is to continue to build the BVI brand. So while building the BVI brand, we must make sure the checks and balances exist all through. Not just on safety, not just on the waste. Madam Speaker, there's 6 pieces of convention, 6 conventions that we are signed on to that the team read this morning, and I'll read it for the sake of the public, Madam Speaker, and highlight some of the examples so that we understand. Madam Speaker, there's the implementation of the Load Lines Convention. That don't sound too sexy. But this convention, Madam Speaker, as it says in this document, regulates technical detail in relation to loading, stability, watertight integrity of ships, including provision for the survey or certification, inspection of ships for the purpose of ascertaining compliance with the convention. So, Madam Speaker, this is load line. This is making sure you rope them good, and you can hold the ship, you can hold the load, hold the strain, Madam Speaker. Number 2, the implementation of tonnage convention. Tonnage refers to the weight of a vessel. Port fees and other ship fees are charged based on the tonnage. The tonnage convention introduced a standards of global system for measuring gross and net tonnage. Gross tonnage forms the basis of manning regulations, safety regulations, and registration fees. And it goes into understanding the 1997, number 1510, etc. Number 3, Madam Speaker, the implementation of standards of training, certification, and watchkeeping for seafarers, STCW Convention. This one, Madam Speaker, establishes minimum standards for training, certification, and watchkeeping, assigning sailors to specific roles for seafarers. It is implemented in the Virgin Islands by the USKI 2022, and it goes on to the merchant shipping and all the things. This regulation specifically is mandatory for standards of competence and training certificate required, and ensuring that everybody on the ship is making provision for the safe manning and operation of the ship. Implementation, number 4, implementation of the MARPOL Convention. This convention, Madam Speaker, addresses prevention of the marine pollution from operational activities or accidental discharge on board vessels. 6 technical annexes provide regulations for. Annex 1, oil, preventing from the pollution for the operations of oil spills or accidents. 2, noxious liquid substances carried in bulk, how to discharge and clean residues from bulk cargo. 3, harmful substances carried by sea in packaged form. Sewage from ships, standards for discharging sewage in the sea and where prohibited. Garbage from ships, number 5, banning the disposal of plastics into the sea, categorizing the different levels of garbage and in the manner of disposal. And 6, air pollution, sets the limits on the emissions from the ship exhaust and measures to reduce the greenhouse. Madam Speaker, I can focus on number 3. Sorry, number 4. Sewage from ships. Because here's the thing about the BVI, whether you're in District 1 through 9, the BVI is surrounded by water. And right now, unless it is reported or somebody is caught red-handed, there is nothing that is currently being done to ensure that people are not dumping the sewage. And these are big ships we're talking about, but I'm talking even about the bare boats and the yachts. What is being enforced to ensure that we are protecting this resource that we have? So, Madam Speaker, these conventions that the team and this legislation is signing on to help strengthen what we do here in the BVI is extremely important. And all 6 annexes are extremely important, Madam Speaker, but we have to ensure, Premier, we have to ensure that where we lack the resources, where we lack the training, where we lack the skills, Madam Speaker, we're afraid to call for help. We're afraid to call for help. And if they don't help me, then we come talk with them. Because they have a responsibility to help and ensure that we are doing the things that need to be done. Madam Speaker, I'm almost done. I have a few points of concern. In this bill, section 430, 430F, (430S) deals with the search and seizure without a warrant. Leader opposition touched on that. So, we're given authorization to search ships, personnel, cargo without judicial oversight. And my question always is, not that we're not doing what's right, or appearing to do what's right. But Madam Speaker, how does the enforcement of this law, or the enforcement of these powers, match up with Article 12 of the Universal Declaration of the Human Rights? How does it match up against Section 19 of the Virgin Islands Constitution, which deals with your rights and your freedoms, Madam Speaker? While we are given these powers, we have to ensure that we are doing it in a balanced way that is not top heavy, so to speak, Madam Speaker, that you're not infringing on the rights of the people. So, Madam Speaker, while the enforcement is critical. We must ensure that we safeguard and put safeguards in place to prevent arbitrary searches. We prevent searches on a will, on a whim, on a feeling or a thought. The arrest without warrant, 430G. I understand that the AG will be busier. She's always busy. Ensuring that the authorization given or needed to be able to execute these duties, Madam Speaker, are clearly set out and permission given, but Madam Speaker, it just can't be given at will. You can't tell me you're excluding I don't know what the correct term is in terms of the customs officers that are out on the sea doing their border security. But you can't tell me those senior officers, you're going to equate them with a constable. You can't tell me, Madam Speaker. You can't tell me. It doesn't make sense. Because if you go through the details of the police force, there's a certain level of training that you must go through and achieve to be able to execute certain duties and responsibilities. So, Madam Speaker, the use of force by law enforcement officers, which is in 40I, if you allow force to be used without strict limitations, you could lead to actions that may violate the prohibition of the inhumane treatment under Section 13 of the Virgin Islands Constitution Order 2007, and also Article 5 of the UDHR. Mr. Speaker, I hinted to her, so let me just say, while I appreciate and recognize the Honorable Attorney General, her powers too, Madam Speaker, and not the individual, but the office, the powers within the office. Just as if it was, we're suggesting a change from governor to minister. Let's ensure that if it's going to be minister in cabinet, so that there's some sort of accountability factor. Now the AG is the AG, but the AG also would be able to report and give updates to an in cabinet, or if necessitated, Madam Speaker, to the National Security Council on operations that are happening. It has to be accountable. It just can't leave things out to chance, Madam Speaker, because at any time you could have somebody that gone off the deep end. I know Honorable Dan Smith wouldn't go off the deep end. She's short like me, so she'll stay in shallow waters. Madam Speaker, I'm concluding. Madam Speaker, I believe that in 40K, where it deals with the lack of liability for the officers failing to follow the code of practice, and Madam Speaker, Honorable Walwyn spoke, Honorable Leader Opposition spoke about the code of practice, and I just want to highlight, Madam Speaker, 2001. I just want to highlight where I saw some areas in the code of practice that were in the UK that I believe, while we took certain parts of it, Madam Speaker, it's important to ensure that wherever it would help to strengthen what we want to do, that we use it. So, Madam Speaker, this document, the Mass Maritime Autonomous Service Ships UK Code of Practice, Madam Speaker, November of 2018, it gives the ability for the enforcement of what I believe what we're trying to do. So when it comes to regulations, we have regulations that would be that very accountability factor that we're speaking about. So communication systems, safeguard management, the operator training, security and pollution prevention, ensuring, Madam Speaker, that while we are putting the legislation together and amending the legislation to be able to register bigger vehicle vessels, to be able to earn and bring in more revenues to our borders, we also have to ensure that the enforcement officers know what to look for. And they're training to understand the different things that if this is a violation, if you have oil in the sea, or if you have this amount of oil or this in the sea, or how to be able to detect certain infractions within this piece of legislation, Madam Speaker. It just can't be on one end that we're giving you powers, but we have to give you the parameters and safeguards within those powers and the training necessary for you to be able to execute those powers. So, Madam Speaker, I believe that this legislation, health and safety, operator responsibility, risk assessment procedure, emergency procedures, the lines and training, which is one of the conventions that are there. Madam Speaker, I believe with everything that's in, we may not be able to use everything that is in the document from the United Kingdom, but where it comes with ensuring that our people are given all training tools necessary. Because now I can just be a police officer or a customs officer, but now my specific assignment will be towards the maritime industry. And I will need to hire more customs officers and more police officers because we're beefing up to be able to secure our borders and be able to be able to do what we need to do for ourselves. So, Madam Speaker, while we talk about fees and talk about playing on the big stage, we don't just want to do so in terms of the letter of the law, but we want to be able to ensure that practical steps can be taken, evidence can be seen by our people, securing our borders and helping to build out this industry, be able to charge what we need to charge, be able to collect what we need to collect, and be able to secure the borders for which we are responsible, not just the 200 nautical miles, but in partnerships with other jurisdictions, Madam Speaker, we are able to ensure that we are building and continue to build a BVI that we can continue to be proud of. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you.